First of all, I thank you all for coming. What a great event. So many people here, and I hope you guys all learned something really great today. And I appreciate everybody that sets up these things. There's a lot of work that goes behind these, and it's fun. I love this stuff. I always say I have the greatest job on earth. I sort of do this for a living. Mine is have to actually set stuff up. I just show up and get free beer. So I absolutely love it. How many of you guys, or maybe they probably left the room because they've seen it. Anyone seen this session before? I've done it a couple times. Ronnie did, and James, you saw it. So this is my and yeah. So this is my greatest hits. This is all I got, man. So I got one session. You guys get to listen to it. I'm not going to stand next to this microphone. I'll try, but I won't, and I can't promise. So I'm going to do my best here. This is all I got. But I've been in this industry for a long time, and I've been very fortunate to work with a lot of really smart people and have a lot of really smart people around me. And I've been smart enough to sort of keep my mouth shut sometimes and listen. And I used to have a tagline, smart people listen. And not saying I was smart, but maybe they told me to shut up. So I don't know. But about 5, 6, 7 years ago, I started writing all these things down because in my head, probably like yours, is maybe your mother, your father, your grandparents, or maybe some other voices you've met through life teaching you these different things that sort of impacted you and changed your trajectory. And I had a bunch of those. So I started to write these things down because I thought maybe I'll write a book of all this stuff and title it something like, How to Succeed in Life Being a Complete Idiot. So, but hopefully it's not that bad. So anyway, so that's what I wanted to share. My name is Douglas Brown, and I work over at Control Up. First of all, I'll give you a little bit about my story. I am just a normal guy from Iowa. How many people know where Iowa is? Do you actually know? It's not Idaho, it's Iowa. So it's in the middle of the country. It's farmland. It's a very simple place. I'm just nobody. Really, from a nowhere. But here, I must have done something well because I'm in London right now and with free beer. I mean, this is awesome. But this is also me, a bearded guy. I did cut my hair in this picture, drinking a really nice Caipirinha at the Ritz-Carlton. So it's sort of like a contradiction in terms. Crazy guy at the Ritz-Carlton. And I love to go there and play a game, which I'll tell you if you ask me privately. But I won't say it publicly because you can't do that. You get in trouble nowadays. So anyway, I'm not a special person. I'm just a normal guy that happened to listen to a lot of people. So what I wanted to do is sort of share these 12 lessons. I think there's actually 13, but maybe 11. I don't know. Never learned to count. So the first one that I want to share with you is it's one that probably the biggest one that's ever. And the second thing is I presented this up in Dublin, and these guys said, I think it was Ronnie back there that I like to pick on because why not? I said something like, well, these are really great for people starting out. And I thought to myself, well, that really sucks because I think about these things constantly in my head. And this is the first one I think about constantly. And if you really want to see me pissed off, it's when someone doesn't understand this or just sort of lets it pass them by. So this one was taught to us all by Bill Gates. So the famous IBM conference or meeting where IBM brings Microsoft in the early 80s and said, we would like to buy your operating system. And Bill looks back at him, looks over at Paul Allen, his co-founder, and Steve Ballmer, and they just sort of like, well, we don't have an operating system. And Bill looks back at Microsoft and says, yep, you can have it. We'll sell it to you. So they walk out of the meeting, and Ballmer's screaming at Bill, going, what are you doing, man? We don't have an operating system. He goes, let's buy one. In that simple act of having an opportunity and an asset, his asset was they were smart people, they had some money, and they went out and bought an operating system. And well, we're all here today because of that one meeting. Right? Because Bill sees that opportunity and that asset. There's been many opportunities we've all been given in life. They say, oh, I'm too busy. I want to go do this. Or, oh, that isn't important enough. Or I'm too important. Or whatever. I'm too lazy. Right? When somebody gives you an opportunity, take it. Opportunity knocks, right? It'll change your life. And anytime I've ever been given an opportunity, I've always like, yeah, whatever I can do, right? Because I'm young and foolish and a no one from no place, right? So, So yeah, the opportunity and the asset. We all pretty intelligent people. I think we're all pretty good looking. Ronnie back there, but we're all pretty good looking. I'm going to pick on you, my friend. You're way far. You can't get me. You can't attack me, right? If I see you running, I'm going to stand behind Neil. Okay? So we all have assets. We all have our opportunities. Leverage them, guys. This is the biggest thing I could possibly, and keep this in your mind. When someone says, hey, do you want to do this? Say yes, and then figure out what it is. That's actually got me in a lot of trouble, but those are related to the Guinness. But that's a different story in a different session. Much more fun session, by the way. Read every overview. This is an interesting one also. When I was an engineer back in the day, many years ago, you would go out on site and I always call it Christmas Day, right? You go out on site, you have I'll show you how old I am, or at least when I was an engineer, you have 3 ProLiant servers, 4 ProLiant servers, you get some RAID cards, fax boards, things like that, right? And you get to open them all up and play with it, put it all together. It's like Legos. Once you're done with it, you got to leave, and here, you play with it. I'll go build it for somebody else, right? And so, that was always fun for me. And every time you did that, you end up with all these manuals, right? At least nowadays, it's all virtual or PDFs, or it's online, it's in communities, things like that. Back then, they were just little, the stuff that came inside the boxes. So my senior engineer, the guy that sort of took me under his wing and brought me along, this was a very interesting guy. He was from Baltimore, Maryland, East Coast guy. I'm from, remember, the middle of the country, nowhere. And he moved to Iowa to marry a farmer's daughter. And if you know anything about the old saying, I'm going to marry the farmer's daughter, and he actually did. And she was a hottie, too. She was super cool, too. She was, super cool lady. Super cool lady. So anyway, and I love this guy because all he wanted to do is just sit there and share stuff with me. Hey, have you done this? And you think about this and what have you. So one day I'm out on site, and I'm Christmas morning, right, so to speak. I'm unboxing all my RAID cards and fax boards, and I would take one manual and I'd stick it in the keyboard box and put it in and give it to the customer. I'd throw the rest away. So he comes out and he says, hey, what do you do with all the manuals? I said, well, I put one in the keyboard box and I throw all the rest away. He's like, okay, why don't you keep one for yourself? Put it in your bag and take it home and read the overview. I was like, why? He's like, if you read every overview of every manual of everything you get your hands on, you will know a tremendous amount of stuff, and you'll spot things that you might be interested in, then you'll dive deeper. Or you'll be at a conference like this, and you'll be like, oh, yeah, I know a lot about fax boards, Neil, and Neil's like, oh, man, I love fax boards too, right? I read your bio. So you said, and now you start telling me all about fax boards, and you feel really special because you're sharing with me, I'm sharing with you. We both walk away going, that was an awesome conversation. I learned more about fax boards because of your, insatiable love for fax boards, and Ronnie, who doesn't like fax boards at all back there. Right? So the more you can learn, the more opportunities you'll bring to yourself, right? And the more assets you'll create for yourself too. And the more conversations you can have with people. It definitely changed my life. And still to this day, I still read almost everything I can possibly get my hands on. Not in great detail unless I really love it. But at least I read a little bit of it so I can have a little bit of that knowledge. And then I go out to YouTube and then go down the rat hole of it, right? I wish, if I would have met him in the YouTube days, he would have said, watch every YouTube video you possibly can. So read every overview. Learn as much as you possibly can. Don't be, worried that it's too much for you, because an overview is only a couple pages, right? It's not difficult. Next. This one comes from a gentleman named Ben Hogan. So any golfers in here? Yeah? Okay, we got 2 golfers. So I played golf since I was 4.5 years old, and it was one of those things my father made me do. He's like, son, or actually he didn't say son, he called me boy. Boy, you will play golf. And I was like, okay. So I would go in and play in the sand traps and try to build sand castles. The one thing you don't do on a golf course is build sand castles in the sand traps. Bad idea, but it's what I did. So, but as I started growing up and becoming better at golf, there was a gentleman named Ben Hogan. And Mr. Hogan, as we call him, was not the most talented golfer. He did not come from money. He did not grow up at a country club and be given the best clubs and the best teachers or any of that. He watched his father shoot himself in the head at age a very young age, in his late, some 8, 9, 10 years old. And he grew up very poor and with no talent. But what he did is he just said, you know what? I might not be better than these people, but I can outwork them. I might not be as talented as these people, but I can put in more effort. So he had this great saying, a day without practice is a day away from being great. I remember the first time I started moving into the server world and started learning TCP IP and thinking, I don't have a clue what this stuff is, right? And you all probably remember learning something, you know, and you're like, or the next thing, I don't know anything about this, right? So what I did is I put magazines. Nowadays you have your iPhones or your Androids, but I put magazines everywhere in my house. Every bathroom had all the magazines in there. NT Magazine, InfoWorld, CIO, all these magazines. I'd just sit there and read these one after another. None of it made sense to me, but I'd read it again and then another one, thinking that someday I will understand this. I don't know if that day has come, but let's say it has. So, you know, a day without practice is a day away from being great. If you have time to 5 minutes to do something, find 5 minutes to do something productive. That doesn't have to be work related. Maybe it's just personal related. Maybe it's, I don't know, whatever. Maybe it's how I can drink more Guinness thanks to you fine folks. That's actually, it's really Nigel that brings them to me. The rest of you guys could care less about my Guinness habit, right? So, anyway. And the next thing I like to talk about, this is very important. I still stress this today. I stress it at Control Up. I stress it at IJO. I talk about it almost every session. Everything I teach my kids about this, goals versus results. You know, the goal is to be a really great engineer. The result is you become a CTP. You know, the goal is to make people really happy. The result is they buy and advocate your product for you. You know, if you set your goals and your priorities right and do things for the best possible way, you know, the best for the people, you know, then in return you will get something out of it, right? You will achieve your goal way above. I don't look at the result. You know, I don't say I want to be rich, right? I'm not rich, I'm divorced. So ex-wife very well, me not so well, and that has zero to do with Ronnie. So I wish it did. I wish Ronnie had my ex-wife. Actually, I like you very much, so I don't want you to have my ex-wife at all. If you know someone you don't like, we can hook them up. So I do really want to go to E2E this time, and I can't because my sister's getting married. So I tried to get the E2E guys to date her, but no, it didn't happen. So anyway, goals versus results. Very important. Set your priorities properly, right? Look at, you know, not what you want to be, but how to get there. You know, the goal is not fame and fortune and free beer. The goal is to build a PowerPoint that, you know, 12 things that somebody likes, and that person doesn't. And, sorry. But yeah, goals versus results. Very, very important. And within Control Up community, I constantly talk about this too. You know, you go to your bosses like, what do you want to build this? You know, what are we doing here? Oh, we want people that buy more product. Okay, let's create happy people. No, we want them to buy more product. Let's create super happy people. Doug, you don't seem to get it. They need to buy more product. Okay, well, these guys are going to love us so much, they're going to flood LinkedIn for 2 weeks with this thing called Dexy, right? So that's what we do. So here's one back from this crazy guy that, you know, married the farmer's daughter. And he said, and I'll never forget this one. We're having a few beers, ironically speaking. True, but ironically that we were having a few beers. And we're in a town in northwest Iowa, way out in the middle of nowhere. We went up to this town because the school was hit by fire, or hit by a lightning, and just melted the core infrastructure. So we're up there replacing all this stuff, which was really interesting because I started to learn actually how to sell things from a technical way, where we go in there and start making friends. Oh my Lord, look at this. Awesome. I can pick on you next. No. I'll never do that because he bites back. I'm very good, Jim Moyer. I've known Jim forever. I've never once pronounced his last name properly. And it's not because I don't mean to, it's because I don't have that ability. So anyway, So this guy, we're sitting up there drinking a few beers, been working all night, all day for a few weeks, and he would always sit there and just teach me things, just rattle stuff off his, hey, Doug, do you know about this and this and this and this? And so one night we're sitting there and we'd had a few too many. He looks at me, he goes, Doug, you're a good engineer, you can build a great network, but if the end users don't perceive it's a great network, you will never be a great engineer. And of course, we've been drinking. I replied back, I'm the best there ever was. I mean, what's wrong with you? He's like, no, let's be serious. He goes, let me teach you a bit about perception. Let me teach you how to actually do the job, not just be really good with ones and zeros, right? He said, if the end users don't perceive that your network is great, it's not a great network. He said, let's say you could build a network where they thought, or their ass itched, and an arm came out of the monitor and scratched it for them. Unless they knew about it, unless they knew how to use it, unless they wanted it, it doesn't matter how great it is. Right? You need to understand there's more to the job than just being technically proficient. Right? And that just blew my mind. I was like, wait a second. I was like, I could care less about any of that, but it sounds really cool. And that was the beginning of why I'm standing here today on stage talking to people, because I didn't want to talk to anyone, right? All people are stupid except for us engineers, right? Neil? Not Neil, and not Ronnie. Ronnie's super smart. Jim, on the other hand. So it's about perception, and this is what he said. There's more to doing the job than just being really great at what you're doing. There's a bigger picture. We need to share that. We need to communicate that, right? And if you can do that, if you can start doing those things, you can really start. And you start selling. We all have a boss. And I'm not talking the boss that pays you. You have a boss that pays you. You need to make that person happy. But you also have the end users, right? One of the first things I did whenever I was a consultant is I'd go ask the customer, hey, who's the loudest, most annoying, worst person in this company that complains about IT constantly? And they were like, Jim. Jim constantly complains about every single thing we do, right? So I was like, okay, I'm going to go make friends with Jim, right? Because once I made friends with Jim, which I'm still working on, by the way, once I make friends with Jim, then, other people will be like, oh my God, Jim loves this? Jim is a part of this? Jim thinks this is working? It must be amazing, because Jim always complains about everything, right? So, again, it's about perception. It's about doing more than just building a good network. It's about being more than just technically proficient. It's about how you do it, how you communicate, how you bring people along with you, right? It's a community at the end of the day, for lack of a better term. That said, I love this one very much too, and I've told this a lot. I've told a lot of my friends this. I have a friend, Gunnar from E2E, really great guy, that he actually started teaching this to his employees that work for him. And many years ago, this is probably 97 or something, I'm standing outside having a cigarette with my boss at the time, and actually, yeah, my boss at the time, and he looks at me and goes, Doug, let me teach you a lesson. I was like, ooh, goody, and he said, he goes, the best advice I can ever give you is to keep 1 foot in the door and 1 foot out. I was like, well, what are you talking about? I was like, I thought you liked me. You want me to leave? He's like, no. He goes, we think you're strange, but we want you to stay for now. Ronnie, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? Got to pick on somebody. And then he continues and he says, the foot in the door is for us. We're going to keep you in there. You're going to do great work, hopefully, and we're going to get a lot of benefit out you and what have you. The foot out the door is for you. You're going to start learning about new technologies. You're going to spot new opportunities, right? Back to opportunities. You're going to meet new people that we could possibly sell to. When we're up in northwest Iowa for that lightning strike, I spent 2 years up there after that initial engagement just selling and doing wireless and Citrix and NT rebuilds and Novell conversions just based on that one thing. That opportunity and the asset of what I was learning I never went back to Des Moines. It was awesome. I even had a girlfriend up there, which was pretty cool for me. I was a nerd, She was cool at the time. Didn't end up cool. Better than my ex-wife, though. But anyway, So, and he said, and then the foot out the door is also for us. He goes, because you'll spot new opportunities, you'll spot new technology, you'll spot new things, and you'll bring those back into the company, and we will grow. Citrix was one of those. I was heading home from work one night, walking out of the consulting company, and the lady said that did all my work orders said, "Hey, are you heading home?" I said, "Yes." She gave me a system board. I dropped it off at a company. We started talking about mainframes because I grew up on mainframes. And he said, "Oh man, you'll absolutely love this. Take this home." And it was WinFrame 1.6, the big giant box. Who remembers the big old Citrix boxes? Super. And I was like, "Oh, I can't take that. That's this giant box." No. Take it home. Install it. Play around with it. When you come to pick up the board, drop it back off. I was like, "Okay." I took it home. I installed it that night. It changed my life. Everything changed at that particular moment. Right, and then the next morning I went back into the consulting company. I told them all about this. This is the Citrix thing. Oh my God, this is amazing. Do you know what we can do? Oh my Lord. I was like, "Can we do Citrix?" He goes, "If you could sell it, we can do it." And, a year later, Citrix called me up and said, "How would you like to work for Citrix?" Right, all from 1 foot in the door, 1 foot out. And then, that puts me up here drinking beer. Yeah, thanks, Nigel. That guy's name was Carl Foltz that I met that day. I saw him at VMworld when I was out in Vegas last year for VMware Explore. And it was so I just passed him. I was like, "Wait a second." And it was so cool because that guy changed my life. But it was really the foot out the door that did. That opportunity, looking for that opportunity, leveraging my assets, being humble, right? No, not thinking I knew everything, right? So, which of course I don't. Nobody does, except for Jim.
That is not true.
Yeah.
Ronnie.
And Ronnie. Okay. Okay. And this one is really good too. And this is more about being humble and realizing who you are and what have you. And the journey along your career and your path and your life and what have you. And this applies to tech or anything. But I was talking to my boss one time. His name is Arlo Pranos. Really wonderful dude. Anyone remember? Nigel, did you ever meet Arlo? So really, really great guy. And Arlo was sort of like a Zen master. He would call me up, and I remember he called me up one night. And he goes, "How many people know the name Rick Dillinger?" So yeah, Rick is the godfather of all of it. And he called me up one day and he said, "Rick is doing these thing called VMware," and he tells me all about all this. What you can just re-image a server and you can revert to the snapshot. I was like, "So you want me to use VMware?" "No, I didn't say that." He totally wanted me to try out this VMware thing, right? But anyway, I absolutely loved Arlo. He was so great. He taught me so much. He gave me all these different lessons. He supported me. He gave me confidence and what have you. And one day I'm talking to him and I said, "Arlo, I absolutely love you. You're the greatest boss ever." He goes, "Doug, if you meet the Buddha in the road, kill it." I was like, "What?" He goes, "If you meet the Buddha on the road, kill it." I said, "Well, what are you talking about?" He goes, "I got to run, Doug." And then he starts to put the phone down. He goes, Doug. That means don't kill anybody. Don't kill anybody. Because I'm from Iowa, And what do you expect? We got to. So I was like, he hangs up. And for 2 years, I never Googled it, never looked it up. I just started thinking about it. And because it was one of those things that just really hit me. And what he was saying is, I went to this guy and said, "You're the greatest thing ever. You're what I want to be. You're the end-all, be-all." And in the road to enlightenment, once you believe that and I'm not a Buddhist, so I'm probably screwing this up, but this is how I see it. Maybe Jim knows better. So on the road to enlightenment, the path, when you believe you know it all, that's when you stop and you continue down that path. You start continuing to go, right? So, once you believe you're Buddha, once you believe you found everything, once you believe you have it all, that's when you just stop and say, "I have nothing," and then I continue down the path. It's just another, great thing you learned along the way, right? So Arlo is just one of many teachers. And since I met, since that day, that was probably 2003, that this conversation happened, I've had 1,000 other conversations, So some with Jim here. He's actually taught me a lot. I give him credit. So it's a big one. Don't take yourself seriously. Keep plugging along. You know, find your idols, achieve those goals, and then find another one. Keep going, right? Never give up. Us versus them. This is one I think I've talked about in almost every session I've ever done when it wasn't something I had to do for a company or what have you. And it's more so. I've always said this is more important today than it's ever been. And that is, we always have us versus them. And today you have, races versus races, rich versus poor, techs versus, engineering versus sales. Engineers, we're smart people. Sales, dummies. Right? How many people are salespeople? You actually want to admit that? Vicky, you're awesome. So, no, but it's not us versus them. We're symbiotic, right? We need each other, right? It's very important. But it also, when you break down that us versus them, it's us. It's family. It's the first thing I do when I'm trying to build a community is to say, it's not you versus me. It's not, sales versus engineer. It's not black versus white or rich versus poor or whatever, right? It's we. We're in this together. Right? And back to that, picking on poor Jim here as being the loud, annoying, horrible employee. Once we bring Jim into the equation, now Jim's part of the family. What's Jim doing? He's running around saying how great the environment is because it's part of him. He's part of the family. Your family could be totally dysfunctional. Right? Your kids could be horrible people. Your wife or husband are just murderers, whatever. But when I meet you and say, hey, how's the family? You're going to be like, oh, I love them. They're great. My kids are honor students. You can beat up the honor student, right? But you don't say that, right? Because it's family. Externally, it's beautiful. Internally, it's chaos, right? Hopefully it's not, of course. But this is why you break down us versus them. And it's just nice. We're all in this world together, right? You got to love one another. And then they give you free beer. Thank you very much, Nigel. And I have a couple more. This one's really important. This one I read a book years ago about, and we all know this one. I read a book called Thinking Like Einstein. And so let me take you through a sort of a thought experiment, if I can be so bold to steal Einstein's thing. And so would we all agree that Einstein was a genius? Anyone think that Einstein was not a genius? Okay. Would we all agree that Einstein got more intelligent over his years, right? Or not intelligent, more knowledgeable, right? He continued to learn, right? So let's draw an XY axis, and he's always a genius. You're born a genius, he's a genius. But from age 0 to whatever he died at, he kept getting smarter, more knowledgeable, right? But what happened when you look at his productivity, what he actually created, his theories, right? The ones that were, still valid today. They all came in the very front, and his productivity actually went like down. Knowledge up, genius straight. Life is continuing until he dies, of course. But his productivity went down. You see the same with artists, with musicians, writers, things like that. Why? Why is that? Also people like us, right? There's people like, who haven't I picked on? James here. 10 years ago, James was all the rave, right? He was creating the greatest stuff ever. You see nothing out of James anymore. I don't know why. I do know why. And that is called rule ruts. What happens is Einstein started believing what he knew. He started living in the rut that he created for himself. When he created the special theory of relativity, what did he do in order to achieve that? He broke Isaac Newton's laws. Who would have broke Isaac Newton's laws? Nobody of any intelligence level would have done that. 0 people, right? But Einstein was young and foolish. He looked out of the box, right? He did not believe in that because he didn't know any better. Right? That's why these people in the early days of their career create these amazing things. But if you really, really think about if you're mindful of this, you can step out of that sometimes. And you see this. Led Zeppelin got better. Are any Zeppelin fans? Nobody likes Zeppelin. Do you like Zeppelin? Come on, man. Zeppelin's the best, I'm not rocking the house party anymore. I'm older, right? But Zeppelin's still the best. So I'm sorry for the rest of you guys. Led Zeppelin, come on. They got better. The Beatles got better too. Beatles fans? You're English? Come on. Okay, come on. Come on. What do you like? Like a hip hop? What's going on in this room? Neil?
Einstein didn't break Newton's laws, he expanded upon them.
Excuse me? What, did he go after me? I got the steak, baby. Not for long, though. Afterwards, I'm going to be hiding, you know that, right? Because he's going to get me. I don't know why I picked on him. So definitely, rule ruts is keep thinking out of the box. Don't believe what you think is true. You know, constantly question things. That goes for anything in life. You know, just if you're a guy, if you're a guy, don't do it to the wife, and if you're a wife, don't do it to your husband, because men get really pissed. If you don't believe us, ask around. So do it. But yeah, constantly keep thinking out of the box. Constantly keep doing it. And along the lines of that, when Steve Jobs was doing his famous commencement speech at Stanford, how many people have seen that speech? Has anyone? If you haven't, Google that. It's one of the best speeches of all time. He talks about 3 things in his life, and those are 3. He tells you 3 points, and it's absolutely spot on. The guy knew what he was talking about, and he was dying, so he was even more conscious of what was going on. But he ends up by saying, stay young and stay foolish. He wasn't saying, you know, be a young idiot and go out and drink beer until you pass out on the street corner, you know. He wasn't saying, you know, to be an idiot. What he was saying is to keep the mind open, you know, keep that young attitude, you know, and constantly question what you're doing. And by Steve doing that, he created some of the best innovations the world's ever seen. And since Steve left, Apple's gone down the tubes, right? Because, Cook's an operations guy. Any operations people in the room? Of course not, because why would you be? You're out counting your money. So that's what my ex-wife is doing. Someone's going to be pissed off at me about it. My jokes are my jokes. I do not represent my employer. And last thing I want to talk about, no, one more. Almost last thing, and that is smart people listen. Each and every one of you guys that have been here all day long and listening to these sessions are smart people. You're listening, you're learning, you're opening your mind. Keep doing that, right? I always say dumb people talk. You know, I talk too much. You know, Jim? Cue Jim.
I'm listening.
Okay. Touche. And leaders share. And this is an interesting one. I read this interesting thing once. It was from Stack Overflow. You guys know Stack Overflow, the website you can ask anything, and then when you ask it, all the people flame you for not knowing the answer. You know, but they did a survey, or they ran the data, right? And what came back was that the leaders in Stack Overflow, the leaders in the development world, were all sharers. But the interesting, which makes sense, but the interesting piece was they weren't leaders when they started sharing. They became leaders because they shared, right? And, I mean, I'm not a leader by any way, but I definitely got free beer because I'm sharing, right? Is that how it works? Well, he just took pity on me like everyone else. That's what Jim does. So, but he doesn't give me free beer. Do I get free beer later? So, anyway.
Free cigarettes.
Oh, yes, I do like that. But that's a whole different thing. I came home one time, my wife said, I walk in the door and my wife said, Liebman, it's so great to see you. I'm so happy you're home. I know you cheat on me when you're on the road. I was like, I do not cheat on you. I know you do. And I was like, no, I don't. And she said, I know you smoke. I was like, I totally do that. So anyway, so please share. Share what you have. Share what you know. You know, I run a community. I built IGEL community, now Control Up community. There's no stupid question. You know, there's not. You know, the dumb questions, what you might think, the ones, how do I install this? There's 80,000 other people wanting that other to know that question. You know, so please ask it, and then you'll learn from them. Please share. Share what you know. And the last thing, this is definitely my last one. So you guys are all done, and Jim's going to beat my ass. Ronnie's, he's going to be, thank you. Is to follow the path you were given. And this is also somewhat from Steve's speech, but it's definitely from my life too. I have a good friend that, every now and then, life isn't always that, rosy, and you have ups and downs. And, I do have an ex-wife. I am glad she's gone, but, it's definitely not something I would wish upon somebody. You know, you get, you know, new jobs and you get fired, you love loss, you know, also your parents pass away, your friend, you know, life is difficult, you know, so life is not a straight line. You're going to have ups and downs, but you have to have faith in your life, and you have to follow the path that you were given. You know, I did not, when I was 30 years old or 25 years old or 20 years old, wanted to be a community manager. I don't like when people call me a community manager. I always say I'm an engineer by training. I just sort of drink beer for a living nowadays, right? But I love what I do, because hopefully I'm able to, through what we're doing, and through this community, we have many of them out there now. We're able to help people and make other people better, and what have you. And I'm looking back on that, and I'm so glad I do what I do today. But when I was 30 years old and I joined Citrix, and they said I was a pre-sales engineer, I called up my father and said, I do not want to do this. I want to come back to Iowa. I want to be an engineer, because that's, you know, that's the best job in the world is an engineer. You know, I'm not a salesperson. No offense to you, fine sales. Definitely not you, Vicki. But that's not what I want to be. Right now, I'm so happy I did it. I just followed that little step, one dot after another, one little passion, one little more enjoyment. And now I look back and I'm so far away from where I ever wanted to be, and I'm so glad I'm here, mostly. I mean, Jim sort of scares the shit out of me, but... And that's it. So I thank you all, and the last thing I want to say is there are lots of really amazing communities. You see sort of Citrix killed off the CUGC, but there's a lot of great things. I love what the EUC Forum is doing here. You know, this is a testament to these people. There's so much work they have to do. The Dutch community is another phenomenal community out there. James here has a liquidware community, another great one. I have Control Up, iGel did the iGel. There's so many of them out there. WorkSpot is around there. I think, Chris, you have something you guys should do. Everyone, so please, find these communities, share what you're doing, you know, make the world a little bit better place, and have a little bit of fun in the process, right? If you learn one thing from me, my life is a hoot. So, but life is not straight, too. I have ups and downs, right? So that's all. That's what I hope it's useful for you. Just keep this stuff in mind and keep pushing through. And now we go drink. No, dude. We do round table. And then we drink beer. I'm drinking beer now. So that's it.